Number 8. Vorayouth Uvidaya. As a young heir to the billion-dollar Red Bull fortune, Vorayouth boss Uvidaya was long considered to be above the law in his native Thailand. A grandson of Chaleo Yovidaya, who co-founded the energy drink brand, Vorayouth was protected by his wealth to the extent that he got away with a fatal hit and run. On September the 3rd of 2012, he was driving his Ferrari at high speed while having a concoction of alcohol and illegal drugs in his system. He struck Police Sergeant Major Wichian Klamprasert, who was on a motorbike, and dragged his body for over 300 feet before fleeing the scene. Several charges were brought against him, and the authorities ensured the public that the case would be taken seriously. However, Vorayouth failed to appear in court for 8 consecutive times, as his lawyers had repeatedly postponed summons. He then fled to Singapore, where he abandoned his private jet. As of late July 2020, all charges against the young heir were dropped on the instructions of the Thai Attorney General, without any elaboration or explanation. Number 7. Ethan Couch. When he was only 16 years old, Ethan Couch killed 4 people while driving under the influence. Couch grew up in Burleson, Texas, under conditions of considerable wealth, stemming from his father's metal roofing company. He was driving himself to school at the age of 13, and when the educational institution questioned this practice, Couch's father threatened to buy the school. On the evening of June the 15th of 2013, Couch was captured by Walmart security cameras as he stole 2 cases of beer. He drove away with 7 passengers in his father's Ford F-350 pickup truck. Couch was going 70 miles per hour on a rural road where the limit was 40 miles per hour. He then swerved off the road and struck a group of people assisting another driver. A collision of multiple cars ensued in which 4 people were killed and 9 others were injured, including a passenger of Couch's Ford who was left paralyzed. In court, Couch's lawyers called in a psychologist who argued that the teenager was a product of a condition called affluenza, brought on by his wealthy upbringing. The idea was that he couldn't connect his actions to consequences because his parents had never given him any boundaries. The judge agreed, and Couch was given a surprisingly lenient sentence of rehabilitation at a North Texas mental health facility. In December of 2015, however, Couch and his mother were detained in the Mexican resort city of Puerto Vallarta. He'd been declared a fugitive after a video emerged of him on Twitter playing beer pong at a party. For violating his probation, Couch was sentenced to serve 2 years in prison. Number 6. Joran van der Sloot and Natalie Holloway. When he was still in his teens, Joran van der Sloot was connected to the disappearance of 18-year-old American high school student Natalie Holloway. Van der Sloot's father was a lawyer and his mother an art teacher. The upper-middle-class family had moved to Aruba in 1990, where Joran became an honor student at one of the Caribbean islands' private schools. He was a soccer and tennis star, but according to his mother had a problem with lying and sometimes snuck off to go to casinos at night. Holloway, who'd traveled to Aruba on a class trip, was last seen outside of a club on May the 30th, 2005, getting into a car with Van der Sloot and 2 accomplices. The teenager then vanished, prompting a massive search in a case that earned international attention. In spite of mounting pressure, no one was charged in the incident due to a stated lack of evidence, and the teenager's remains were never found. In the aftermath, a video was released of Van der Sloot stating, while under the influence of marijuana, that Holloway had died on the day of her disappearance. In subsequent interview, he claimed to have sold her into sexual slavery. He would, however, retract both statements. A few years later, in 2010, Van der Sloot contacted Holloway's family, alleging knowledge of where she'd been buried. An operation was mounted by the FBI in coordination with the Aruban authorities, and it was revealed that Van der Sloot had false information. He was charged with extortion and wire fraud. Number 5. Joran van der Sloot and Stephanie Flores. On May the 30th of 2010, 5 years to the day of Natalie Holloway's disappearance, a young woman was killed in a hotel room in Lima, Peru. An employee found 21-year-old Stephanie Flores bludgeoned to death in the room that had been registered in Joran van der Sloot's name. A tennis racket was discovered, which a coroner identified as a possible murder weapon. Van der Sloot, who'd fled to Chile in the meantime, was arrested and extradited to Peru. He would initially confess to the fatal bludgeoning, but later tried to retract it, alleging intimidation by Peruvian authorities and having been framed by the FBI. The evidence against him was consistent, however, and included video footage as well as bloodstains on his clothes which matched Flores's blood type. There was public outcry in the country regarding the incident, with the media labeling van der Sloot a monster and a psychopath. In December of 2020, Time magazine would name his arrest as the most notable criminal event of the year. For the killing, van der Sloot was sentenced to 28 years in a maximum security prison. Number 4. Murder of Rick and Susanna Wamsley. On December the 11th of 2003, upper-class Texas couple Rick and Susanna Wamsley were found shot and stabbed to death in their Mansfield home. Earlier that same year, their 19-year-old son Andrew had started dating Chelsea Richardson, but the Wamsleys reportedly disapproved of their relationship. Andrew and Chelsea orchestrated a plan to murder them, and in doing so collect on their $1.65 million estate. They reportedly forced Susanna Toledano, who was roommates with Chelsea, to carry out the double homicide. In November, she shot the gas tank of the Wamsleys' car in a failed murder attempt. The following month, however, Susanna carried out the killings. The conspirators had also planned to kill Andrew's sister, Sarah, but she wasn't home at the time. Susanna would end up testifying against the other two in order to avoid the death penalty and will be eligible for parole in 2034. Andrew was sentenced to life in prison, while Chelsea was deemed a danger to society and became the first woman sentenced to death in Tarrant County, Texas. Her sentence was later commuted to life in prison. Number 3. Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb. Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb came from rich families and enjoyed an upscale life in Chicago's Kenwood neighborhood. They bonded while at the University of Chicago in the mid-1920s as they shared a similar interest in crime. Both young men were extremely intelligent, and Leopold in particular was fascinated by Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of Supermen. The two came to believe that their intellectual prowess placed them above the law and plotted to carry out the perfect crime to prove their perceived transcendence to the world. Leopold, then 19 years old, and Loeb, age 18, kidnapped and murdered Robert Franks, the son of a wealthy Chicago watch manufacturer. They rented a car and offered to give the 14-year-old, who was actually Loeb's second cousin, a ride home. Franks was in the passenger seat when one of the men struck him in the head repeatedly with a chisel, then dragged him in the back seat, where he was gagged and soon died. It's still disputed who killed Franks and who was driving, as neither Loeb nor Leopold took responsibility in the aftermath, blaming each other instead. To conceal the victim's identity, they poured hydrochloric acid on his face and genitals. The pair then sent a ransom note to the family to mask their true intentions. Leopold's glasses, which were of a rare prescription, were found near the body, and both he and Loeb were called in for questioning. Their fabricated story crumbled under interrogation, and both were sentenced to life in prison. Number 2. Lyle and Eric Menendez. Lyle and Eric Menendez were born into an affluent family, with their father Jose working as an executive for Live Entertainment. On August the 20th of 1989, their parents were gunned down in the den of their Beverly Hills home. Jose had been shot in the head with a 12-gauge shotgun, while the mother, Kitty, had been shot in the leg, arm, chest, and face, leaving her unrecognizable. The couple had also had their kneecaps blown off, which led the police to suspect involvement by organized crime. Lyle, then in his early 20s, and Eric, age 19, called the police and, at first, weren't considered suspects. However, in the months that followed, the authorities focused their attention on the brothers because of their lavish spending. Lyle bought a Porsche Carrera, a cafe, and a Buffalo Wings restaurant. Eric hired a full-time tennis coach and went to compete in tournaments in Israel. The brothers drove around in their deceased mother's convertible Mercedes-Benz SL, and after leaving the mansion, lived in adjoining condos in Marina del Rey. The brothers were eventually arrested and confessed to killing their parents, citing a history of abuse as a motive. In 1996, they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 1. Oricon Thefasadin Na Ayodaya. On December the 27th of 2010, teenager Oricon Thefasadin Na Ayodaya was driving one of her father's cars on a Thai freeway without a license. The 16-year-old was texting while behind the wheel and crashed into a university van, killing 9 people and injuring 4 others. An infamous photo of the teen became viral online and contributed to the outrage that followed. In it, Oricon was leaning on a concrete barrier next to her dismantled car, still texting and seemingly unfazed by what had just happened. Her family's wealth protected the teen from the severe ramifications of her actions. Instead of jail time, she was given a suspended sentence and 128 hours of community service, which was only completed in 2016, years after the fatal accident. Orocorn's family was ordered to pay the equivalent of nearly $1 million to the victims. 9 years later, the victims claimed that they still hadn't received any amount of the compensation. From a notorious diamond theft to a brazen bank robbery, here are 7 most daring heists. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to They Will Kill You. Hit the like button and request any topics you'd like to learn about in the comments section below. Number 7. Antwerp Diamond Heist. On February the 15th to 16th, 2003, a crew led by Leonardo Notarbartolo stole over $100 million worth of diamonds, gold, and jewelry from the Antwerp World Diamond Center in Belgium. Notarbartolo was the head of a network of thieves calling itself the School of Turin. The vault that the crew hit had infrared heat detectors, a seismic detector, a magnetic field, a Doppler radar, and a lock with 100 million combinations. Notarbartolo rented an apartment in the Diamond Center which provided a tenant ID card and 24-hour access to the building where the stones were kept. He also gained access to a safe deposit box inside the vault, posing for credibility as an Italian diamond merchant. When the crew hit the vault, they forced open numerous safe deposit boxes and stole the surveillance footage before making off with the goods. The heist remains to this day one of the largest robberies in history, and the stolen diamonds were never recovered. Notarbartolo was connected to the robbery and arrested via DNA evidence from a partially eaten salami sandwich found at the scene. Number 6. Millennium Dome Raid. The Millennium Dome Raid took place during a diamond exhibition in Greenwich, southeast London. The crew planned on stealing several precious stones that were on display and then to escape on a speedboat via the Thames. On November 7th, 2000, 4 members of the gang entered the exhibition wearing gas masks and full body armor. They started throwing smoke bombs. The crew used sledgehammers and a high-powered nail gun to try and break into the display case where the precious stones were held. The plan was working, and according to one of the robbers, I was 12 inches from payday. It would have been a blinding Christmas. However, unaware to them, the authorities had been surveilling the crew's moves for some time. Over 200 officers were involved in what was called Operation Magician. All of the dome's employees had been replaced by armed undercover officers. The robbers and their getaway speedboat driver were arrested before they could make their escape. Had they succeeded, they would have made off with over $450 million worth of precious stones. Now, before we continue with our list of daring heists, it's time for our quiz question. Which of these jewels was the dome robber's main target? Was it A, the Millennium Star, B, the Hope Diamond, C, the Black Orlov, or D, the Cullinan Diamond? Let us know what you think in the comments section below, and stay tuned to find out the right answer. Number 5. Nice Bank Robbery. Masterminded by Albert Spaghieri, this bank robbery took France by storm in 1976. The safe at the Société Générale Bank in Nice was considered impenetrable, which is why Spaghieri devised a plan to break into it from below. He rented a safe deposit box and planted a loud alarm clock inside to check for any acoustic or seismic detection technology. There weren't any alarms protecting the vault because there weren't any access points beyond its thick doors. For the next 2 months, Spaghieri and his crew dug a 26-foot tunnel from the sewers to the vault floor. During the long weekend of Bastille Day on July 16, 1976, they broke into the vault itself. They took hours, opening more than 400 safe deposit boxes in what was the largest bank heist in history up to that point. The crew reportedly sat down for a picnic lunch inside the vault after welding its doors shut from the inside. Before they took off, they left a message on the walls of the vault which read, "Without weapons, hatred, or violence." Spaghieri was caught but later escaped from the courtroom by jumping out the window as a getaway motorcycle rider was waiting for him outside. He was never brought to justice again and allegedly died of throat cancer in Italy in the summer of 1989. None of the valuables he and his crew stole were ever recovered. Number 4. Vincenzo Peruggia. While Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa is widely considered to be priceless, it holds the world record for the highest known insurance valuation in history. In 1962, it was valued at $100 million, which, as of the making of this video, would be adjusted to roughly $840 million. This would make the theft of the Mona Lisa the most expensive heist of all time. The man responsible was Vincenzo Peruggia. In 1911, the former Louvre worker entered the museum disguised as an employee wearing a white smock. He waited until the room where the painting hung was empty. Then Peruggia took the Mona Lisa off the wall and to a nearby staircase. He removed the protected case and frame, wrapped the painting in his smock, and tucked it under his arm. Peruggia left the building through the employee's entrance the same way he'd come in. He still had the painting in his Paris apartment when the police came to question him, but they accepted his alibi. Then, for 2 years, he hid the Mona Lisa in his apartment in Florence, Italy. Growing impatient, he contacted the director of the Uffizi Gallery, who subsequently authenticated the painting. He, along with another gallery owner, then took the painting from Peruggia for safekeeping and called the authorities. Peruggia was arrested and the Mona Lisa had a celebrated return to the Louvre. The headlines that the theft and subsequent recovery had generated only added to its fame. Peruggia argued that he'd stolen the renowned work so that it would be returned to its homeland after it had been stolen by Napoleon. Despite his claims of patriotism, there's some evidence that he expected a reward for doing so. Nevertheless, he was hailed as a great patriot in Italy and given a lenient sentence, of which he only served 7 months in jail. Perhaps Peruggia didn't know that the Mona Lisa had been initially given as a gift to France's King Francis I by Da Vinci himself when he became a painter at his court. Number 3. D.B. Cooper. D.B. Cooper became a sort of folk hero in the US and authored what's possibly the most daring heist on our list. The day before Thanksgiving in 1971, a man in a suit bought a ticket on Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. He gave his name as Dan Cooper, a fake name which the media would later misinterpret as D.B. Cooper. Shortly after the plane took off, the man gave one of the flight attendants a note saying that he had a bomb in his briefcase. Then he opened it, revealing a battery attached to numerous wires and red sticks. D.B. Cooper demanded 4 parachutes as well as a ransom of $200,000 in $20 bills. The authorities complied when the plane landed in Seattle and Cooper released 36 passengers. However, he forced a flight attendant, a flight engineer, and 2 pilots to remain on the plane. Cooper ordered the pilots to take off with a course for New Mexico. During the flight, he ordered the pilots to keep it under 10,000 feet and slower than 230 miles per hour. At around 8 p.m., somewhere between Seattle and Reno, Cooper opened the rear steers and jumped out of the plane. He was never seen again. Cooper left behind only his tie, which in the years that followed, the FBI tried to match with the DNA of several suspects. The identity of D.B. Cooper was never discovered. Some say he didn't survive the parachute jump due to the strong winds, but his remains were never found. The FBI officially terminated its D.B. Cooper investigation in 2016. So, what was the robber's most coveted stone? As you probably guessed from its name, the exhibition's main attraction was the Millennium Star, considered one of the most perfect gems in the world. The flawless 203.4 carat diamond was estimated at over $260 million. Number 2. Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft. 13 works of art by Rembrandt, Manet, Degas, and others with a combined value of $500 million was stolen on March the 18th, 1990 from Boston's Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. It's the largest valued theft of private property in history. The Concert by Vermeer valued at $200 million, was the most valuable stolen painting. The works had been purchased by collector Isabella Stewart Gardner and left on permanent display at the museum, along with the rest of her collection. Around midnight, two men who posed as police officers responding to a disturbance call were allowed entry into the museum by the security guards. Once inside, they handcuffed the guards and began stealing artwork. In a heist that lasted about 81 minutes, they made 2 trips to their getaway car before disappearing. Their last words to the guards were, "You'll be hearing from us in about a year." But nobody ever did. No works have been recovered and no arrests have been made in the case, despite extensive efforts by the FBI. In homage to the stolen works, their empty frames still hang in the museum. A reward of $10 million was extended into 2018 for information leading to the recovery of the artwork. Experts were puzzled by the thieves' choices of artwork, especially since more valuable pieces were left untouched. Number 1. Oak Bay Bank Robber. In the 1970s and 80s, Oak Bay was known as the bank robbery capital of British Columbia. The municipality had a modest population and Oak Bay Avenue had several banks on it, which were often targeted by robbers. While the situation has quietened down in recent years, occasional incidents seem to reflect Oak Bay's past tribulations. Such was the case in 2015, when an unnamed 20-year-old man entered a TD Canada Trust branch, passed the teller a note, and made off with an undisclosed amount of cash. He then drove off in a stolen 2013 Dodge Ram. The police tracked the truck to the parking lot of a Wendy's restaurant. They attempted to arrest the driver, but he backed up into a civilian vehicle, jumped a curb, and fled the scene. The car was found about an hour later, and the suspect was tracked down and arrested with the aid of a canine officer. From a cryptic poem to a dangerous hunt for fortune, this is the story of how the $2 million Fenn treasure takes lives. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to They Will Kill You. Hit the like button and request any topics you'd like to learn about in the comments section below. In 2010, author and art dealer Forrest Fenn allegedly hid a treasure chest somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. The chest supposedly contains numerous gold coins, nuggets, emeralds, diamonds, rubies, and sapphires. Also, a turquoise bead bracelet found in the late 19th century, ancient Chinese carved jade figures, pre-Columbian gold mirrors, and other precious items. Even the bronze chest itself is a valuable artifact dating back to 16th century Italy. The overall value of the treasure is believed to be anywhere from $2 to $6 million. After hiding the chest, Fenn included a 24-line poem in his self-published 2011 memoir, The Thrill of the Chase, containing clues that, according to him, revealed the treasure's location. Fenn's cryptic poem started gaining traction online after a blogger shared its 9 central clues. Tens of thousands of fortune hunters were drawn to the mystery, and the hunt for Fenn's treasure began. The eccentric millionaire reportedly hasn't told anyone, including his wife, children, and grandchildren, where he hid the chest. He has interacted with seekers online to offer some additional clues, and many of them carefully analyze his words for other potential hints. Before we move on, it's time for our quiz question. According to Fenn, why did he create the treasure hunt? Did he want to A. sell his book, B. give people hope, C. be remembered, or D. challenge people's imagination? Let us know what you think in the comments section below and stay tuned to find out the right answer. Forrest Fenn is a veteran US Air Force pilot who flew 328 missions in the Vietnam War and was awarded a Silver Star for his service. After retirement from the Air Force, he partnered up with a man named Rex Arrowsmith, from whom he learned the art business. They opened an art gallery together, which Fenn would operate with his wife Peggy as the Fenn Gallery. Located in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the business sold various items, from artifacts to fine art. Then, in the late 1980s, Fenn was diagnosed with cancer. It was during this time that he decided to hide a chest containing various valuable items in the mountains and leave its legacy for would-be adventurers. His intention was to take a whiskey bottle and sleeping pills and end his life, on his own terms, near the chest location. However, the cancer ultimately receded. Nevertheless, Fenn waited until he was 80 to hide the chest and then included the location in the Thrill of the Chase cryptic poem. About a year before he started the treasure hunt, Fenn was investigated by the FBI in an artifact looting case. He wasn't charged, but two people who were also being investigated committed suicide, and Fenn has claimed the FBI was to blame for their deaths. A connection between Fenn's treasure and these fatalities hasn't been determined yet. Number 4. Randy Bilyeu. 54-year-old Randy Bilyeu from Broomfield, Colorado, is believed to have been the first to perish in search of Fenn's treasure. According to his ex-wife Linda, the man had made it his life's mission to find the chest. For 2 weeks he scouted along the river west of Santa Fe before setting out on January the 5th, 2016, accompanied by his dog, Leo. He'd brought a raft and was equipped with a GPS device, a wetsuit, and waders. As the days passed, his friends and family got worried, and his ex-wife filed a missing persons report. His dog and the raft were recovered the next day, but the search for Bilyeu was called off by the end of the month due to lack of evidence. The hope that the grandfather would be found alive began to dissipate as the months passed. His remains were eventually recovered along the Rio Grande, north of Cochiti Lake, about 6 months after he'd gone missing. In light of the incident, Fenn advised people not to go looking for the chest in the winter and reminded them to take into account that he was 80 years old when he hid it. This meant it was in a place that an elderly person could reach. That seems to be the million-dollar question and a source alternatively for both joy and heartache when it comes to the treasure hunters and their families. So far, according to Fenn, some have been within 200 feet of the treasure, but naturally, he hasn't released their names. As of the making of this video, nobody has found it. There are a few people who've called it a hoax. Those voices are contradicted by people like Douglas Preston, one of Fenn's friends and a New York Times #1 best-selling author. He claims to have seen the treasure personally and ensured naysayers that it's real and not a publicity stunt. Since no one has found the treasure, the answer still lies in the lines of the poem and the additional hints Fenn has supplied. Many treasure hunters believe that it's in Yellowstone. Fenn said that one clue is of particular importance, that seekers should begin it where warm waters halt and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put him below the home of Brown. Other clues include that it's located somewhere between 5,000 and 10,200 feet above sea level, at least 8.25 miles north of Santa Fe, either in Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, or New Mexico. It's not on private property, in a cemetery, or in a dangerous place. It's in the same spot where Fenn left it in 2010, but he hasn't confirmed whether it's buried or not. Number 3. Jeff Murphy. Jeff Murphy traveled to the Montana-Wyoming border from the Chicago suburbs in search of Fenn's treasure. He went through the northern gates of Yellowstone National Park and set off on a mountain trail that he should have completed in roughly half a day. The hours went by and the 53-year-old made no contact, so his wife declared him missing. A massive search operation was put together consisting of a helicopter, 5 dog teams, 4 horse teams, and 8 hiking teams. Murphy's body was eventually found at the bottom of a steep slope. He'd fallen to his death 500 feet. While officials didn't offer many details about the circumstances of Murphy's death, a news station called KULR-TV obtained the facts through a Freedom of Information Act request. The treasure hunt has drawn people from all walks of life, some of whom aren't prepared for facing the mountains. They can fall, drown, or even get attacked by wild animals. Aside from those who've died, there have been people who've gotten lost or stranded in snow. The lines of the poem are cryptic, hence open to interpretation. This means that some might challenge themselves to reach dangerous areas on cliffsides or through raging waters, believing they've found the right answer. In light of the accidents, the authorities, friends and family members of those who've died and others have urged Fenn to put an end to the treasure hunt. He's considered it and expressed his regrets, but ultimately refused to do so, citing that many other people have had positive experiences while searching for his treasure chest. He claims that some have even turned their life around from contemplating suicide, and that estranged families became reunited through the treasure hunt. It's a double-edged blade that has put Fenn himself in jeopardy. He's been harassed, threatened, and shamed. One man was arrested for stalking him, while another was arrested for breaking into his house, looking for the treasure. Despite all that, Fenn insists that he's the only person who knows the location of the treasure and that he, as of the making of this video, would not give it up. Number 2. Eric Ashby. Driven by the desire to find the chest, 31-year-old Eric Ashby had moved to Colorado in 2016. He was last seen rafting on the Arkansas River on June 28, 2017. At some point, his raft overturned and his remains were found about a month later, 10 to 15 miles downstream from his last known position. DNA confirmation of the treasure seeker's identity was released by the Colorado Bureau of Investigations towards the end of January 2018. In light of the incident, Ashby's friends and family and others have been pushing for a piece of legislation in Colorado that would be called Eric's Law. It turns out that 4 people had witnessed the moment his raft overturned, but didn't do anything about it. This type of legislation is referred to as a duty to rescue law. It will require individuals to intervene, seek aid, or notify the authorities when they see someone in peril if certain conditions are met. As of the making of this video, Ashby is the most recent life claimed by the search for Fenn's treasure. He died just 2 weeks after another treasure seeker. So, why did Fenn create the treasure hunt? While there might be truth in the other answers as well, according to the man himself, it was B, to give people some hope. At the time, the country was going through a recession, so he wanted to give hope to those with a sense of adventure and the will to go exploring. He was also reportedly motivated by the desire to get sedentary people, especially children and teenagers, out into the mountains and the sunshine. Number 1. Paris Wallace. Pastor Paris Wallace from Grand Junction, Colorado disappeared just 2 weeks prior to Eric Ashby. He told his family that he would go looking for the buried treasure about 50 miles north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Then he didn't show up for a family gathering, which got them worried. The police tracked the pastor's phone and found his car near the Teos Junction Bridge in New Mexico. Inside the vehicle, they discovered receipts indicating he'd purchased supplies and a rope from a local store. A torn rope which had been tied around a rock on a riverbank was subsequently located a short distance from Wallace's car. His body was later found 5 to 7 miles downstream. Despite the lives taken by the treasure hunt, it seems that it will keep going until the chest is found or Fenn puts an end to it. Number 8. Soraya Vucelic. In the summer of 2019, former Playboy model Soraya Vucelic crashed a Lamborghini while on holiday in Cannes on the French Riviera, and the incident was reportedly triggered by her choice of footwear. 32-year-old Vucelic, who had begun modeling at the age of 19 and had once been named Serbian Playboy's Playmate of the Year, posted a video of the crash's aftermath to her social media. In it, the blue supercar was seen still attached to a harness after it had been hoisted out of a swimming pool. Vucelic wrote in the video's caption that the Lamborghini had ended up in the water after her high heel had slipped off the brake pedal. The clip was met with numerous comments from her over 350,000 followers, some of whom suggested that Vucelic's relaxed attitude towards the crash stemmed from her not being the car's owner. It reportedly belonged to her boyfriend, only named as Vladimir, and identified as the son of a Russian billionaire. In the past, Vucelic had also been linked to soccer superstar Neymar. Other users quipped that the state of the vehicle was unimportant and that they were glad to know the model's heel wasn't broken in the incident. Number 7. Irina Borisova-Shadrina. Florida woman Irina Borisova-Shadrina, age 33, surrendered to Miami-Dade police in the fall of 2021, 2 weeks after an accident that had ended in the death of a supercar owner. On October the 15th, Lionel Michael Marquez had car trouble while traveling along the westbound lanes on the 163rd Street Bridge in North Miami Beach. 61-year-old Marquez went out to check the engine of his 2021
Ferrari SF90 and was standing by the rear of the vehicle. Shadrina, an event planner at a nearby waterfront restaurant, approached the same spot while driving in her Maserati. According to a police report, she swerved to the left and struck Marquez, sending him plummeting into the intra-coastal waterway roughly 30 feet below. Shadrina kept driving for another 450 feet east of the crash's location and only stopped upon slamming into a barrier wall, which caused her front tire to become detached from the vehicle. Police arrived at the scene of the crash at around 11 p.m. and found the two crashed cars surrounded by dozens of witnesses. After taping off the area, the authorities spent hours searching for Marquez, whose lifeless body they eventually pulled from the water the following day. In the immediate aftermath, the police collected blood samples from Shadrina after noticing that her eyes were watery and red. Subsequent analysis revealed that her blood alcohol content was roughly 3 times over the legal driving limit in Florida. She subsequently faced felony charges of vehicular homicide and manslaughter, which carried a maximum punishment of up to 30 years in prison. Number 6. Gage Gillian. A Texas teenager crashed his father's one-of-a-kind Pagani Huayra Roadster in November of 2020, then took to social media and expressed what many viewed as a rather careless reaction to the incident. Gage Gillian's father, Tim, had founded Cross Equities, a Dallas-based private equity firm. He owned a fleet of high-end vehicles that included a Bugatti, Ferrari, McLaren, and Koenigsegg, which he'd made available to his son. As an aspiring YouTuber, Gage ran the channel GG Exotics, which was primarily focused on supercar-related content and often featured his multi-millionaire parent. Gage later told his subscribers that he was out on a drive in the Pagani, along with friend and fellow YouTuber Zach Walker, when he felt the back right tire fail. As per his account of the events that followed, Gage lost control and hit the curb, which sent the Pagani flying into a tree. The team related that the doors became detached from the supercar on impact and that its front was completely destroyed. While Gage had blamed the accident on tire pressure, there were rumors that he was speeding and could no longer handle the supercar before hitting the tree. In the immediate aftermath, he made an Instagram post about the accident to say that it happens, and later posted a photo with his arm in a sling. Neither YouTuber sustained life-threatening injuries in the crash, but the Pagani, estimated at $3.4 million, was completely totaled. When asked about his father's reaction to the incident, Gage admitted that he was mad upset, but went on to say that a car is replaceable, I'm not replaceable. Number 5. Crash in Swiss Alps. A crash involving 2 supercars along with several other vehicles was reported in the summer of 2020 on a roadway in the Swiss Alps. According to information released to the media by local authorities, a motorhome had been slowing down traffic up Gotthard Pass. The driver of a Bugatti Chiron, which at the time was one of the most expensive vehicles in the world, with a price tag of around $3 million, then tried to overtake the motorhome at the same time as the driver of a Porsche 911 Cabriolet. The 2 high-performance vehicles collided with each other, which then caused the Bugatti to hit the motorhome and the other vehicle to crash into a Mercedes. The driver of the latter was taken to the hospital with serious injuries, but none of those involved in the accident were reported to have been left in life-threatening condition. A video subsequently shared on social media showed both the Bugatti and Porsche with their airbags deployed. The footage also revealed the damage that they'd sustained, with the former having its grille, front bumper, and hood busted, while the Porsche's front had been completely mangled on its left side. Local news publication 20 Minuten estimated that the total damage of the accident was over $3 million. Number 4. Lingu. In the early hours of March the 18th of 2012, a brutal crash involving a Ferrari 458 Spider was reported in Beijing, China. The vehicle had been traveling at such speeds that it split in 2 upon hitting a bridge at around 4 a.m. Photos of the accident began to circulate on internal social media sites in the immediate aftermath, but shortly thereafter, information related to the incident started to disappear or became inaccessible. As news outlets outside of China started to cover the story, the possibility of a government cover-up began to take shape. Reports indicated that local police had initially attempted to conceal the identity of the driver involved in the crash by recording a different name on forms associated with the incident. The man behind the wheel of the Ferrari was ultimately identified as 23-year-old Lingu, son of Ling Juhua, who was among then-President Hu Jintao's most trusted political advisors. The New York Times reported that Gu and two female passengers were in a state of undress in the two-seat supercar at the time of the crash. The women both sustained severe injuries, and one was said to have been left paralyzed from the neck down. Gu's fate wasn't made immediately clear, but the prevailing narrative was that he'd died at the scene, a theory supported by the fact that his college friends hadn't heard from him since, and his social media hadn't been updated. The circumstances surrounding Gu's death caused a considerable degree of outrage among the country's middle classes. Many felt that the incident further exposed the opulent lives that those in positions of authority and their relatives lived while trying to maintain a working-class facade. A few months after the story broke, Ling Juhua, who'd been responsible for leadership security, was removed from his position. Number 3. Wei Yang Lautner. A 24-year-old man lost control of his Lamborghini while racing against a Ferrari in Surabaya, East Java, Indonesia, in late 2015. Unable to regain a grip on his supercar, Wei Yang Lautner then plowed into a street vendor, as well as a married couple, only named as 41-year-old Srikanti and her husband, Kuswantoro, aged 51. The latter's body was dragged by the Lamborghini for several feet before the vehicle crashed into a tree. Kuswantoro was pronounced dead, while his wife and the street vendor both suffered broken legs after being struck by the high-performance vehicle. Witnesses caught a video of the events that followed, and the footage, which was picked up by multiple media outlets, showed Lautner texting and speaking on his cell phone while hanging out the window of his crashed supercar, struggling to get out. Lautner was arrested and charged with violating traffic laws through his reckless driving, which carried a maximum punishment of 6 years in prison and a fine of less than $1,000. However, according to updates on the matter, the Surabaya District Court gave Lautner a prison sentence of only 5 months. The judge explained that the lighter sentence stemmed from the fact that the young man's family had been financially assisting the victims and their families since the accident, and had pledged to continue providing financial assistance in the future. Number 2. Amelia Hungerford. Australian lifestyle journalist Amelia Hungerford was invited to an event held by McLaren in 2018, which involved breakfast at a hotel in Woolloomooloo, as well as testing one of their supercars. The drive was recorded via a GoPro camera, and the footage showed the journalist initially having trouble starting the vehicle, as the brake reportedly needed to be fully pressed. Then, while driving through Ku-ring-gai National Park, Hungerford rounded a corner and briefly lost control of the McLaren. She ended up on the wrong side of the road and slammed into cyclist James Tan, a man in his 50s. Hungerford was, at the time, driving at roughly double the speed enforced by an advisory sign. Tan was left with severe injuries to his leg and face, which he subsequently claimed had significantly impacted his health and work as a dentist. While at Sydney's Downing Centre local court in 2019, Hungerford pleaded guilty to dangerous driving, occasioning grievous bodily harm, and was given a 1-year sentence. She tried to appeal, but the decision was upheld, and the 31-year-old was jailed. Number 1. Jajuan Aldi Smith. In mid-April of 2021, officers from the Tampa Police Department in Florida spotted a 2018 Ferrari 488 Spider, which had been reported stolen out of Sarasota. The suspected carjacker behind the wheel was subsequently identified as 22-year-old Jajuan Aldi Smith. He managed to evade the authorities during an initial chase. Additional units then assisted the pursuit and followed the vehicle to the Riverside Palms apartments, where it was ultimately boxed in by law enforcement. It was later revealed that during his attempt to avoid capture, Smith had severely damaged the supercar on its front left side. A passenger in the vehicle was released after questioning, while Smith was arrested at the scene. A search of the stolen Ferrari resulted in a Glock 9mm handgun being found on the driver's side floorboard. Smith's subsequent charges included, aside from grand theft auto, felon in possession of a firearm, and aggravated fleeing to elude.
Number 10. Tara Reid. An it girl from the 90s to the early 2000s, Tara Reid was a highly sought-after actor, often filling the roles of the beautiful girl next door. After amassing huge success in highly popular films such as The Big Lebowski and American Pie, she all but disappeared from the big screen after 2 botched surgeries in 2004. She went in for liposuction and a breast augmentation, but neither was successful. The procedure left her disfigured, with rippled skin and a massive hernia that forced her to hide her body and pass over movie roles. Despite knowing something was off, She lived on in shame and discomfort for 6 months, following her doctor's assurances that it would get better. To make matters worse, she suffered from a highly publicized wardrobe malfunction in which her breasts and its unsightly scars were exposed. Reed's surgery mishaps were extensively featured in the media, and she eventually went under the knife again in 2006 to remedy the past wrongdoings. However, the emotional and physical damage was done. Reed bounced back in 2013 with the surprising popularity of the Sharknado franchise that went on to have 3 sequels. Number 9. Joan Rivers. One celebrity that was open and honest about all the work she had done was Joan Rivers. She started making adjustments to her face in college when she had her nose shaved thinner. She was known for her self-deprecating humor and reached international fame as a comedian for making fun of fellow celebrities. But she was also known for her face and its constant evolution of different shapes and proportions. Rivers' face crept past the phase of plastic and teetered on puffy when she unfortunately died at age 81 in a botched routine surgery on her throat. In a memoir written by her daughter after her death, it was revealed that she'd had a total of 348 procedures that stemmed from constant dissatisfaction with her looks and a sense of being less than. Number 8. Farrah Abraham. Plastic surgery frequenter Farrah Abraham had the shock of her life after a botched lip injection. Right from the start, she knew something was off when the anesthesia didn't work and she could feel every painful prick. After suffering what was clearly a bad reaction, her upper lip puffed up and distorted her face. She spent the night in hospital, but the ordeal far from changed her opinion on plastic surgery, which she regards as one of her passions. The reality star posted pictures of her swollen face and lips across her social media to cause a laugh and to bring attention to the potential complications that could happen to anybody. Although the ordeal was frightening, she is still a proponent of cosmetic and plastic surgery and intends to pursue a job in the industry. Since 2012, she's had a rhinoplasty, a chin implant, lip work, and 2 breast augmentation operations, but admits she'll probably stick to fillers in the future. Number 7. Mickey Rourke. In the early 1980s, Mickey Rourke was a young rising star in Hollywood, twice winning awards for Best Supporting Actor. With soft, feminine features combined somehow with a rugged manliness, he was compared to heartthrobs James Dean and Marlon Brando. The actor was always open about his unease with fame and, in the early 1990s, quit acting to become a professional boxer. By 1994, he was so battered and broken that he quit and returned to Hollywood. Changes in his appearance did not go unnoticed, and the rumor mill churned as strong as ever. Despite evidently engorged cheeks, Rourke denied claims of plastic surgery. Then in 2009, he came clean and admitted to going under the knife, but as a necessity to put his face back together after his short-lived boxing career. But the foray into plastic surgery didn't stop, and his appearance continued to change until he became practically unrecognizable. He has remained tight-lipped about any procedures, but doctor and hair transplant surgeon Hala Elgmati provided her professional take. In her opinion, although overdone, the work done had not been botched. With absolutely no lines marking his forehead, she strongly believed the Botox work probably caused permanent paralysis of the muscles. In addition, she saw signs of lip, chin, and cheek injections, as well as at least 1 neck and facelift. Dr. Elgmati wasn't the only person to call his new look jarring when considering the extreme changes in the proportion and ratio of his facial features. Number 6. Burt Reynolds. A name often found on doctors' lists of the most disastrous plastic surgeries is that of Burt Reynolds. Reynolds was a Hollywood superstar in the 1970s and 1980s, known for his rugged good looks and statement mustache. He was a sex symbol and American icon, titles which he presumably hoped to hold on to with a little enhancement. Burt Reynolds always denied getting significant work done, but as his body aged and wrinkled, his face did not. After a public appearance at a party in 2012, his face appeared so pulled back and stretched that another partygoer described it as looking painful. Reynolds did admit to 1 operation on his eyes, which left them looking sunken and drawn in. Celebrity plastic surgeon Alex Cardis theorized that the tight, plastic appearance of his face was most likely due to getting a facelift with incredibly sun-damaged skin. Sadly, Reynolds passed away from a heart attack in 2018. Number 5. Jocelyn Wildenstein. American socialite Jocelyn Wildenstein has acquired what can be best described as a unique look, but has denied ever going under the knife. Despite her claims that her high cheekbones come from her Swiss heritage, plastic surgeon experts around the world disagree. The media often refer to her as Catwoman and speculate that she spent upwards of $5 million to achieve the final look in a reported bid to win her ex-husband back. She ultimately got engaged to fashion designer Lloyd Klein, who fully backed her up, claiming she has always looked the way she did and got compared to Brigitte Bardot constantly. Coincidentally, Lloyd's face also changed ever so slightly since the pair had met. Wildenstein's ex-husband, who died in 2008, was outspoken about her procedures, but she boiled it down to a smear campaign as a result of their bitter divorce. Regardless of the truth, Jocelyn reportedly found peace by accepting she had nothing to prove, leaving the public to come to its own conclusions. Number 4. The Bogdanov twins. Despite their appearance in later years, the Bogdanov twins entered the small screen in the 1970s as boyishly handsome heartthrobs. They were massively popular TV presenters with their own science fiction series. They reportedly underwent their first procedure in the early 1990s, and it looks like they haven't stopped since. Although they've never come out forthright with denial or confirmation, it's believed they have had chin and cheek implants as well as multiple rounds of Botox and fillers. Some loyal fans defend the pair and suggest the disparity in their look is due to a hormonal disorder called acromegaly, which has caused the bones in their face to enlarge. Number 3. Priscilla Presley. Priscilla Presley was the victim of a botched cosmetic procedure performed by an unqualified doctor. The man in question was Daniel Serrano, popular among celebrities for throwing lavish injection parties at $500 per dose. He claimed his injections were better than Botox, but in fact, they were filled with low-grade industrial silicone, used primarily on auto parts. The injection caused the off-putting changes in Priscilla's face and caused lumps, holes, and paralysis in some fellow victims. She went to get more corrective surgeries to try and remove and replenish what had been lost. The Argentinian doctor wasn't even licensed to practice medicine in the States and was found guilty of conspiracy, smuggling, and use of unapproved drugs. He served 18 months in a federal prison before being deported. Today's topic was requested by Max Lewis. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Jennifer Grey. Jennifer Grey became a prominent name in Hollywood after starring opposite Patrick Swayze in the classic film Dirty Dancing. However, following the success of the movie, Grey underwent 2 rhinoplasties that effectively ended her career. The second surgery was corrective to fix problems left by the first, but nonetheless, the results were surprisingly drastic and even close friends failed to recognize her. In her own words, she went into the operating room a celebrity and came out anonymous, claiming it was the nose job from hell. I'll always be this once famous actress nobody recognizes because of a nose job. No longer sporting the same face, she was severed from her past acting accomplishments in Dirty Dancing and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, only appearing in supporting roles or box office flops in its wake. Grey considered changing her name in an effort to relaunch her career, but ultimately decided against it. Despite losing her chance at A-list celebrity status, Grey never fully disappeared and went on to win season 11 of Dancing with the Stars in 2010. Number 1. Pete Burns. Coming from a childhood of trauma and isolation, Pete Burns, the frontman of popular 1980s band Dead or Alive, turned to plastic surgery in the face of fame. His very first procedure, a nose job, left it too crooked to even support sunglasses. Yet he wasn't put off. He continued to have over 300 more procedures with varying amounts of success. Although he was able to drastically change his appearance as he'd intended, he had to pay in spades with his health. In 2002, he suffered another botched procedure, this time with lip fillers. His lips swelled up 18 inches and caused an infection that left him with holes in the skin, which would seep yellow pus. As the infection worsened and spread around his body, the permanent lip fillers spread around his face. The huge amount of medication he was on further wrought havoc on his immune system and caused near-fatal blood clots and embolisms, hospitalizing him for 10 days. He sued the doctor and won over $600,000, but over the next 2 years, it all had to be filtered back into over 200 corrective procedures. Pete's mental health also took a toll from the traumatic experiences, and in the following years, he struggled. By 2014, he had spent his fortune on plastic surgery and had to file for bankruptcy. 1 month before his death, in 2016, he appeared on Channel 5's Celebrity Botched Up Bodies and talked openly about his relationship with plastic surgery. Referring to himself as Frankenstein, he likened getting surgery to buying a new sofa and admitted every inch of his body had gone under the knife except the soles of his feet. Whether to be taken humorously or as a tragic summarization of his suffering, he stated, "I hope when I'm 80 that I get to heaven. God doesn't recognize me." He passed away at the age of 57. Number 11. Tommy Lee. Thomas Lee Bass, better known as Tommy Lee, is one of the founding members of popular American heavy metal band Motley Crue. Throughout his career, Tommy has been the subject of numerous controversial issues, most involving drugs and alcohol. Stories have emerged of him setting trees on fire for fun, urinating into police cars, and even allegedly pouring sake over train passengers during a tour of Japan. On one occasion, Tommy almost got into a fight with actor Nicolas Cage's son. This reportedly occurred after he had attempted to enter Cage's dressing room, but was denied entry by security. Tommy has also been arrested for domestic abuse against his former wife, Pamela Anderson, with whom he has 2 children. He pleaded no contest. Tommy was sentenced to 6 months in prison with mandatory community service and counseling. In March of 2018, Tommy even got into a brutal fight with his own son, Brandon, who was 21 at the time. The fight allegedly started from a tweet posted by Tommy. During the fight, Tommy was reported to have been knocked unconscious and he suffered an injured lip. According to Brandon, Tommy's alcohol abuse was a major contribution to the fight, in which he'd acted in self-defense. Number 10. Courtney Love. Courtney Love has been making headlines for decades as a singer-songwriter of rock band The Hole, as well as for her marriage to the late Kurt Cobain of Nirvana fame. After the rock world was shook by Kurt's death in 1994, conspiracy theories emerged that Courtney had been involved. This theory, however, is flawed and unlikely, as Cobain's death was officially ruled a suicide, and there is no concrete evidence to suggest Courtney was responsible. On many occasions, Courtney's antics have been public, including incidents on live television. In 1995, she threw a shoe at Madonna during her interview at the VMAs, before she proceeded to hijack the interview itself. In 2004, in what was to become another defining moment for the rock star, she appeared on CBS's The Late Show. Just seconds after walking on stage, she climbed onto host David Letterman's desk and flashed him. Throughout the interview, she was manic, unable to compose herself and respond to Letterman's questions. Later, she confessed that during this time period, she had been dealing with substance abuse, a recurring issue throughout her life. Nowadays, Courtney is said to be doing better. At the 2020 NME Awards, she proudly announced that she was 18 months sober. Number 9. Mayhem. During the 1990s, Norwegian black metal band Mayhem was surrounded in controversy. In 1991, their vocalist, known as Dead, killed himself at just 22 years old. He had shot himself in the head after first slitting his wrists. Mayhem's guitarist, Euronymous, discovered the body. Before calling the police, however, he purchased a disposable camera to take photos. He also collected fragments of Dead's skull, which he turned into necklaces and gifted to artists he deemed worthy. Euronymous had founded a record shop called Helvete, the Norwegian word for hell. A dangerous group of people from the black metal scene had formed, and they met at the shop regularly. They called themselves the Black Metal Inner Circle and found purpose in bringing fear to Norway. Drawing inspiration from Satanism, they became militant and were involved in arson, assault, and murder. In 1993, Euronymous himself was murdered in his apartment. He was stabbed a total of 23 times by Varg Vikernes, another fellow black metal artist and former bandmate. Attacks linked to the black metal scene continued across Norway for years, most notably arson attacks on churches. Nowadays, the black metal scene is more established and has been able to shift away from its previous association with extremists. Number 8. Liam Gallagher. Liam Gallagher was the iconic frontman of Oasis, a Manchester-born rock band which he'd formed in 1991 with his brother Noel. Throughout their time as Oasis, both Liam and Noel embraced the hedonistic side of the rock scene, though Liam arguably took it to the extreme. Witty, charismatic, and always living life on his own terms, he was revered by fans. Controversy, however, was never far away. In his younger years, Liam frequently fell out with people who challenged his behavior. This included other artists, reporters, fans, and often even his own brother. Many of these altercations turned violent, amplified by alcohol and other substances. Anyone who dared challenge Liam's behavior risked getting involved in a brawl with the rock star. On one occasion in 1998, Liam was arrested for assaulting a male fan during a tour of Australia. During the incident, Liam reportedly punched and headbutted the man, breaking his nose. According to police, the fan was a 19-year-old tourist who had just asked Liam for a photo. A decade later, after huge commercial success, Oasis officially split up in 2009. Number 7. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne rose to fame as the lead vocalist of Black Sabbath, nicknamed the Prince of Darkness. He's had his share of controversies. He once bit into the head of a bat that was thrown on stage, thinking it was just a toy replica. It may or may not have been alive at the time. On another occasion, he reportedly bit the heads off 2 live doves during an argument with CBS Records, just to silence the room. Osbourne was also arrested once for public urination. He had urinated on a monument near the Alamo, commemorating fallen soldiers. This also earned him a 10-year ban from performing in San Antonio. Number 6. Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson has been responsible for some of the most shocking moments seen in rock star history. Many of his controversies are too graphic to mention in detail. Manson once told a journalist that he went grave digging in New Orleans. While there, he collected human bones from the ground. He then brought them to a hotel room where he smoked them through a pipe with his friends. Manson has also intentionally injured himself during performances. During a San Francisco concert, he cut his chest from side to side with a broken beer bottle. Number 5. Axl Rose. Axl Rose, lead vocalist for Guns N' Roses, has a reputation for becoming aggressive. On many occasions, he has lost his temper both with fellow artists and fans. Axl once challenged Nirvana's Kurt Cobain to a fight, whilst Cobain held his baby daughter in his arms. In 2006, the band Eagles of Death Metal was selected by Tommy Stinson to open for Guns N' Roses. Axl arrived to the show 30 minutes late and then insulted the Eagles. Axl threw a bass guitar at Tommy after he expressed his frustration at Axl's behavior. On another occasion, Axl jumped into the crowd during a Guns N' Roses performance. He attacked a fan holding an unauthorized camera before leaving the performance early. Fans rioted, and Axl was arrested and charged for inciting the riot. Number 4. Keith Moon. Keith Moon, drummer for The Who, had more than a few controversies associated with him. In 1967, on his 21st birthday, Keith reportedly drove a Rolls-Royce into the swimming pool of a Holiday Inn in Michigan. This led to the band being barred from every Holiday Inn hotel in the world. 3 years later, however, Keith was to be involved in a much more tragic story. On the night of January the 4th of 1970, Keith accidentally killed Neil Boland whilst intoxicated. Reportedly, Keith was sitting inside his Bentley, enduring an attack from local skinheads who were damaging his vehicle. Neil, his chauffeur and bodyguard, had exited the car to deal with the attackers. Keith then took position in the driving seat despite not having a license or insurance. In the chaos, the impaired Keith did not realize Neil was in front of the hood of the Bentley. He accelerated, pinning Neil under the vehicle and dragging him down the road. Neil died instantly. Keith was initially charged with Boland's death, as well as drunk driving charges. A few weeks later, the death was ruled an accident, and Keith escaped serious charges. He did, however, plead guilty to the driving-related charges. In 1973, Keith was set to perform at a concert in California. Before the performance, he consumed large quantities of brandy and horse tranquilizer, causing him to pass out. An audience member was invited up by the band to finish the set in his place. Number 3. Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine have been prominent in the rock world for over 20 years. Throughout the band's career, they've frequently drawn public attention. They've been known to burn American flags during their live performances. The band even shut down the New York Stock Exchange for a day whilst recording a music video, prompting a riot police response. Today's topic was requested by Maya Davis. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Billy Idol. In 1989, whilst in Thailand, Billy Idol spent 3 weeks hosting raging parties in his hotel penthouse. During this time, Billy caused $149,000 in damage and room fees. Hotel management attempted to calmly remove Billy, but he refused. The military had to be called in, and Billy was shot with a tranquilizer dart before being escorted out on a stretcher. Number 1. Slash. Slash, who rose to fame as the lead guitarist of Guns N' Roses, brought even more controversy to the band's name. According to his memoir, in 1981, he was once so intoxicated from substance abuse that he believed he was being hunted by an alien from the Predator film series. Whilst in this state, he punched through a glass door at a golf course hotel in Arizona whilst completely naked. He then grabbed a hotel maid and held her as a human shield as protection against his hallucination. Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on one of the links on your screen for more videos.